giving a nice buffer for CP time and Omar time. We can call this Omar time because that was so good. Everybody wants some more. Everybody wants some more.
One question was, how can I leverage my current property to purchase my next property, Harrison?
That's a great question. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in this panel. But the understanding of equity, right? Equity can be achieved in two ways. Market forces, which remember we talked last year about like almost a 20% appreciation over some properties. That's just from sitting there and letting the market do its thing and making your house worth more because other homes close by are worth more. It can happen that way. You can actively increase your equity by doing things like hiring Benji, hiring a contractor to improve the things inside. And you can tap into that equity in different ways. Our lender, Matt, was up here earlier between home equity line of credit, cash out, refi. It's making sure you understand clearly your equity position and understanding your options and the implications to access that equity. It's a little bit different for everybody, but those are the main two ways.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one more question, and a lot of these questions pertain to the panel, so we'll get to the answers. One more question that kind of goes back to the maximizing piece. What are y'all's thoughts on cash out refis versus HELOCs? And are there any best practices or concerns that people should consider before taking that route to get their hands on more of their resources?
I would say one of the biggest concerns you should think about when it comes to cash out refi is where the interest rate is at right now. A lot of people that got that 2% interest rate during the pandemic, they're trying to pull money out. Well, if you cash out refi, you're gonna have to go to that where their interest rate is at right now, which is like 4.9, 5%, things of that nature. So it might be better to leverage that HELOC more so than the cash out refi. So just one concern I would take into consideration right now is where the interest rate is at.
And having a good lender that can help you compare them side by side, and knowing that equity position, your plan of ownership, how long you're gonna hold it, there can be benefits to both. Did you want to do anything else before? Okay, we'll do it.
But real quick, does everybody know what a HELOC is, or anybody not know? Okay, he's playing HELOC.
Acronym stands for Home Equity Line of Credit. Matt, 2 minutes. We can give it up for Matt. He cut the check. Thank you one more time for Matt. Tell me what a HELOC is.
All right. I need to make sure that I hold the mic right, otherwise Harrison's going to yell at me. So basically what we're seeing in the market right now is that, interest rates have increased pretty substantially for the past year. So cash out refinance is typically effectively off the table, and home equity lines of credit, where basically you can tap into your equity of your home and use it kind of like a credit card, have become a lot more popular. Now, the issue with them is that, like a credit card, they can be very risky. They're typically an adjustable rate. They can be interest-only payments. And when those come due, it can be a burden on your financials. So it's important that you factor that in when deciding if you're going to take out a home equity line of credit. Now, also, what I recommend every single borrower is to get a home equity line of credit just in case, because it can be a cheaper form of financing, but when you don't need it, because typically when you need it, you're probably not going to get approved for it. So, one thing that I feel is that if you do have some equity, even if you don't have a plan for those funds, just go ahead and open one, because it can be a much cheaper option if you need funds. Anything else?
I think that's a great overview of it, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Also with home equity lines of credit, it is like a credit card where, you can draw on it, build up the balance, and then pay it off, and then draw on it again. The other type is called a home equity loan, where that's more of like an installment loan, where you still take equity out, but you make consistent monthly payments, pay down the principal balance.
Yeah, I think that's good. And there are so many specific scenarios, but have a clear understanding of equity and what he said there, a clear understanding of your exit plan, how long you're going to need it, what you're going to use it for, how long until you pay it off. Because all of our loans, right, we think about, when am I going to be done with those? What 2 Chainz said that song, my goal in life is to be mortgage free. Mortgages include home equity lines of credit, crash out refis, and every other thing you can do to borrow against your house. Thank you so much, Matt. Please give it up for Matt real quick. And went a little out of order, but to introduce us, I'd like to actually invite up Jamie McNeil, Coalition Properties Group, Director of Operations. Please give it up for Jamie.
Shout out to Jamie. She has done an amazing job organizing all of this. So please give a big round of hands for Jamie.
They totally put me on the spot here. But firstly, I want to say thank you guys all for being here today. We were very nervous about not being able to fill this room, but I am so thankful that we were able to, and all of you guys have made it an amazing day. So thank you guys. Shout out to you guys. So I get to introduce these guys. I get to work with them every day, and working with Greg and getting this event started up has been amazing. So Harrison Beecher, managing partner, Coalition Properties Group, and he's also president of everything. We got Greg Jackson, the Action Jackson. Follow him on Instagram. His Instagrams are great. And then Keith James, managing partner, Coalition Properties Group, and Ryan Butler, Coalition Properties Group. But yeah, thankful for these guys. I've been with Coalition for about 7 months now. So being able to get in here and start this planning and this event has been great, and I'm excited to bring it back next year. Even bigger.
Thank you so much, Sammy. Thank you. All right, so the concept of this panel is talking about how you multiply and all the different ways you can do it. So our mission at Coalition Properties Group is to be the bridge to our community for all things real estate, lifestyle, and wealth building. And this is really a bridge conversation about how you get from that first piece that you buy, how you protect it, and how you get to where Omar is. Because by show of hands, who in this room would like to be where Omar is in the future? All right, so we're gonna talk about the bridge, and the good news about this with real estate and what's powerful is there are so many different ways and angles you can go. So Greg and I are gonna focus on the single family rentals because that's a big part of what we do. Keith has been and continues to be a master of the smaller multifamily rental properties as investment and ownership. And Ryan just owns all these doors, man. He out here just put 100 doors up in a year, in a one calendar year. 100 doors, one calendar year, he did that. And it was a pandemic. So I guess if we want to start out, gentlemen, if you want to talk first about your thoughts about multiplying strategy first, and then your specific journey and path and what you did.
Got it. Okay, I'll kick it off. My real estate journey started, frankly, a little bit different from other folks. At the time, I was working for city government, and I was someone I'm a survivor of gun violence, actually. And so I was in city government, but also passionate about that issue. And one of my family friends was killed in Greensboro, North Carolina, Trey. And Trey was best friends with my cousin Tyler, and I'm real close to Tyler. And I watched Tyler go through that trauma, and I figured I have to do something. I have to figure out how to help with this issue of gun violence. But I also didn't want to lose my government job. I also didn't want to lose my salary. I didn't want to stop building wealth for my family or my future family. And so I had to make a real tough decision. Am I going to leave this cushy government job to pursue this more issue-based journey professionally, and suffer financially, or do I just stay where I'm at? And I decided to jump. But when I jumped, I decided to also find an alternative way to build wealth to offset the pay cut, because I actually took a $40,000 pay cut to go into the nonprofit world. And I started researching the stocks. It was Bitcoin. It was like, try this, try that. And I tried stocks and got my ass beat. I tried Bitcoin, didn't know what was going on. And I was like, this is crazy. All this stuff is so risky. I at least like to buy something I can hold. And so that's when I really stepped up and said, all right, I want to buy my first property and try to figure that out. And so I bought my first home. It was extremely bad fix-upper. No electricity. It was pink walls, pink bathrooms, pink ceiling. She had pink carpet. I said, man, and she was still alive too. I wanted to lecture her and be like, why you bought this pink here? Miss Jenkins, man. And she was my neighbor too. She was my neighbor. She was elderly and she wanted to move in with her nephew. And so she was trying to figure out what to do with the house, and she put it on the market, but I raced to buy it first because I knew it was a great house, but I also didn't want it to be gentrified or whatnot. But yeah, I walked in the doors and it was crazy. Plumbing was jacked up. But it was Miss Jenkins' house. And so I tried to do a lot of it on my own. I remember trying to hit a wall one time to demo it, and the electric shock started popping up, and I was like, all right, this ain't no play, You got to hire people, and I learned a lot through trial and error. Big shout out to Dion, who was renovating his house ahead of time, and I was learning a lot from him and Clint and Ronald and others here. But just kind of fought my way through it and learned a lot, but also failed a lot. And in turn, that first property really started to yield some huge results. And so then from there, I bought my third property. And now about 1.3 million in properties is what I own, but all because I took that leap, and frankly took that leap for kind of a more of a social impact cause.
Man, great story, Greg. My journey goes back to high school, to be quite frank. I had a mentor that owned a bunch of real estate.
Sorry.
No problem. I had a mentor that owned a bunch of real estate, and I was collecting rent for him. But what didn't dawn on me was that I was going to 18 different properties collecting rent from this one person, right? So he's my mentor. He coached me in basketball. And I go to Tuskegee University, I graduate. He said, Keith, you gotta start buying real estate. And I'm like, well, I don't know too many people who own homes, right? And so he said, don't worry. He gave me a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That book changed my life. After about, and I'm not one to pick up a book and read like that at that time. When I graduated, I bought after reading that book for about 2 months, I bought my first property. It was a 2-unit building in the neighborhood I grew up in. Columbus, Mississippi. Columba is what we call it. And the reason it was important for me to buy in the neighborhood I grew up in, because I wanted to show my community and my friends on my block that was still there that this is possible, quite frankly. Because one thing about it, exposure is the key, right? You know, in my neighborhood, you can dribble a basketball, you can sell drugs. That's what we looked up to when I was growing up. So I wanted to show them that, hey, instead of renting, let's start buying, you know? And so I just continued to do that, you know. And let me tell you this, I had a 575 credit score, and my clients know this. I had a 575 credit score and $80,000 in student loans. And I bought that property with all of my 401k money, all right? And so when I did that, I'm saying, wow, I went through the process. It's not that hard. Let me do it again. So I did it again after about building up my savings for about 6 months. But one thing that was cool was when I went through it the first time, I had that 575 credit score. The next time, because I paid my mortgage on time for about 6 months, I had a 700 credit score, right? The bureau said, okay, I can trust this guy now. He's not at Tuskegee running up the credit cards anymore, as we did at Soul Land. And then I just continued down that journey. But then I wanted to help my friends buy real estate, right? I wanted to show my friends, hey, this is not as hard as you think it is. So let's do it. And they got inspired. And that's actually what led me to Coalition Properties. And I'm thankful for being here today. So that's my real estate journey.
We're going to come back and get some more. But Ryan, take us to the zenith of real estate investing.
The zenith. So Harrison has a really big vocabulary, and he really likes to utilize it. See how I say utilize?
Good job. Good job.
You see, I did that. Before I got one point to make, I just want to point out that me and Keith James are the same height right now when we're sitting down. It's just when we stand up, it's a little bit different, but when we sit down, though,
You're right,
we're the same height.
You're right. You're right.
All right. Can I be real
I'll
with
give you
y'all?
that.
Can I be honest with y'all for a second? I'll tell you when I had to think about this when I first got interested in real estate, and it took me a while. But I'm also from Mississippi, but I'm from like the country part. Like I'm from the Delta, right? You know, yeah, Mississippi blues country, all of that, where people like, you know, drown in their sorrows and blues songs. That's where I'm from. Actually, if you ever seen the movie Life, that's actually where I'm from. Right in there, right from Life. Yeah, it's a real thing. So, when I was about 10 years old, I had a cousin drive down from St. Louis, Missouri, because, you know, black flight, right? So people just going up and down St. Louis, Chicago, Milwaukee, all of that. Had my family in St. Louis. And he had me come sit in his car, and it was a big old black SUV, right? Had big rims. And he pulled down in the where your glasses go, the little glasses compartment. He pulled down, and he had a Rolex wristband. He had a Rolex wristband. He had a Rolex watch, and he had a diamond cross. And I said, man, how'd you get all of that? He was flipping 10 homes a month in St. Louis right before the crash. So that's what I was like. I was like, is this what real estate gets you? So that kind of stuck in my mind because I was a kid, right? And I didn't realize it till like a few years ago. And so after that, came to DC. I did the NACA program, like many of us in here. I'm also an alumni of NACA.
Pledged NACA.
NACA
You pledged
University. I pledged NACA. So I'm also alumni there, and that got me into my first home where we started house hacking. If you ever heard that term, that's really popular on like Bigger Pockets. But basically, I stayed in one of my rooms, I rented out the rest, and then my mortgage, I was in positive cash flow. Like I was cash flowing like an extra like $1,200 a month. I was like, this is it. Like I'm not going back. And so after that, I was like, man, what else can I do? So I actually bought like 4 homes and did like flips like within the next, call it 15 months. I was like, let's go. So I was ready to go. I was about 24, 25, something like that. Bought like 4 or 5 homes. I lost a lot of money. I made some, but I lost like over 6 figures. And I was like, man, this is a terrible idea. I need to rethink about how I do this. And so I rethought about how to do it. And then it came to the conclusion that I think it's 2 ways. And if you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, you know there's the employee, the self-employed, the business, and the investor. And so when you start putting a little bit of logic behind it, I knew I wanted to be a business owner and be an investor, a long-term investor. And that's kind of where that came from. And now I am a big proponent of multifamily. Even the reasons why we're doing multifamily, why we're doing OwnerCon, all of these things. And I'm not saying, honest to God, we're doing this because of you guys. Like our clients buy their first homes, our clients buy their second home. At some point, they still need to invest in things. At some point, we had to be innovative and iterate to make sure that we could serve you guys as you're going along your growth journey. And so that's why we're in multifamily right now, because we wanted to bring our clients along as we buy, because group economics work. They work. Like, where is that? How can we get money together? That's what it's about. So.
And what's really, Ryan is super humble about that. And hopefully you're hearing is all of our journeys. And I'm going to share a little bit of mine. It all started somewhere, right? It all started with a thought, with a belief, with the intention to try something different. And for me, I actually fall on a lot of the lower ends of the risk and fear profile, like Heath was putting up earlier. Like, they'll tease you. Like, when new ideas come up, my first answer was, no, fear, right? But in my real estate journey, I took what was calculated risk early, and I looked at neighborhoods. As y'all know, I'm kind of nerdy if you haven't figured that out yet. And in DC, I was looking at Riggs Park or Fort Totten. I went to St. John's College High School. I grew up in Silver Spring, used to take the S2 down to the E4, and on the other end of the E4 was Fort Totten. So in my head, I'm like, oh, I remember Fort Totten is the other place in green, red, and yellow. That's pretty cool. And around 2012, because I got licensed right out of college, graduated in 08, got my license right away, and was helping friends and clients. And one of them talked about NACA and talked about this NACA thing. I'm like, man, well, that sounds harder, weird acronym, whatever. And I went to closing and saw that, man, you came out of pocket. Are you getting money back at closing? Like, what? So I tried that myself, but I was paying attention to areas. And the question was, what is just outside of what's hot? What is maybe not as exciting right now, but still in the city, close to transit, and what has some green space? My personal real estate single-family investment strategy is about getting places that have a little bit more yard relative to the places around them. Because if you look at the size of DC, it is a small geographic area. So if you can own a little bit more dirt than your neighbor, my thought was that's gonna give me some more options if I wanna do it later. Wasn't super informed initially, but I was like, oh, a little bit more yard, I can barbecue, I like to throw parties, more people gonna hang out, cool, right? Making that decision in 2014 to purchase in Riggs Park, I was able to get a townhouse for just under $300,000. This is the one that Benji helped me renovate. Benji was in there with me when it was a mess. It had been owned as a rental for about 30 years by this other gentleman, Mr. Johnson. His name was actually Mr. Johnson. Duct tape and shit behind the walls. It was like dangerous and bad in a lot of ways. So I bootstrapped what I could figure out with myself, my in-laws. We did stuff. Benji helped me with my major stuff, HVAC, electrical, things like that. And about a year later, I'm looking at homes around the corner. I'm like, oh man, it's selling for $415 to $420. $415 to $420, that's a lot for 2015. And I'm starting to pay attention, look at market dynamics, and I was able to show clients and friends and some in this room, think about an area that maybe isn't as sexy, isn't as hot, doesn't have all the things you want, just outside of what's there, has a little bit more land. That's probably a good place to deploy your capital, and that's what I did. And it wasn't pretty, it wasn't awesome. I mean, Ryan came to parties in that house initially, right? I didn't fix up everything at once. I did it in stages, I did it over the years. And as that equity position increased, as my cash came up a little bit, I was doing pieces. And that one house, right, starting in 2017, that's when I added more units to my residential single family portfolio. Cash out refinance. I think Matt helped me with that one because it made sense at the time because rates were lower. That cash helped me buy number 2, right? Cash gets up on number 2. I'm able to reposition that debt to buy number 3. Then wife's like, you saw the baby run around, we need a bigger house for ourselves. And number 4 was the one we live in. And then I added another one last year, thinking about that debt in the same way. My most recent one, which I'll just plug because I want to give y'all tactical stuff, is in West Hyattsville. West Hyattsville. We got a lot of folks in this room that be like, I ain't going to Maryland. Murrland. I ain't going to Maryland. But for me, the dynamics of West Hyattsville, from a housing stock perspective, meaning the type of house, single family, semi-detached or detached homes, half a mile to mile from West Hyattsville Metro, all this happening at, and it used to be called, for the folks from the area, we remember when it was PG Plaza. Right now, guess what it's called? It's called the Mall at Prince George's by Westfield Shopping Town. Right? When you study, when you have people like Omar was talking earlier, I was fortunate to have both my friend in the NACA program and some other folks in the real estate game investing, and I was following some of their cues, saying it may not be the sexiest, most exciting thing up front, and there's some work, there's some sweat equity, there's some risk on the other side of it, but when you got a good team with you and you understand your risk profile and what you can do, and you make those selective and thoughtful moves, you can build up a portfolio. Now mine is north of 2 million, right? And that's not even counting the stuff that I do with Ryan on the side, some of the other multifamily stuff, but it was calculated, it was thoughtful. And again, I approached it from a minimal risk profile standpoint, but I made moves that made sense to me at the time. So just know that pay attention to the market, pay attention to your own risk profile and what you do, and make choices that maybe aren't as sexy or as exciting, but that can be a really smart way to build single family rental portfolios. And right now, the free game given to all of y'all is look in West Hyattsville. If I wasn't buying another house to live in, because wife wants another one with the baby, I would be putting all my money right into West Hyattsville right now, just because it's 1930s to 1950s brick row homes. They're pretty easy to renovate. And the rent, people looking at the rents in Northeast, right across Eastern Avenue, like I set a record for my rental that I have, like nothing has ever rented for as much as my rental house is in West Hyattsville. And I didn't even know that would happen. It was a surprise, but people are looking for affordable options that are not that far away. Remember that phrase, not that far away, a little bit of risk, understand that risk and be calculated and thoughtful with it. But that's a bit of my journey. And I don't know if we wanted to go back to Greg talking about like how you're thinking about your next moves, how you're planning for it, and some of the technical parts of going from 1 to 3. I think that'd be helpful for folks to know some of the tactical stuff.
Yeah. So I'm not like him. I'm not as calculated. And my friends will tell you like I'm the first one to jump out the door on things. But I don't always land. And so, again, my first property, I saw it. It was literally across the street from where my first investment property. So I owned my first home, and Ms. Jenkins' house was across the street. And I saw that sign go up, and I said, dang, I got to get that thing, man. And I went and visited the sign went up that morning. I went and visited at 7:30. I said I wanted to put my offer in at 10:30. And that evening, there was 7 other offers on that house. And that same day, I was like, dang, this sign ain't even sitting up straight. And it was like, man, all the contingencies thrown out the window. And what I also realized, too, a lot of the folks the gentrifiers was undercutting her. And so I actually gave her the best deal. And not only did I know her, I gave her the best deal, which was exciting. But then when I got in there, I didn't do all the calculations. So I was just kind of doing it live, just trying to figure it out piece by piece. But what I will say is I learned a lot through that process. And what helped me, especially in the renovation stage, was to not get too overwhelmed and just to do one piece at a time, one room at a time. And again, Dion was doing the same thing. He was living in the house he was doing construction in. So I was like, if Dion can live under the sawdust, then I could deal with it a little bit. But just keeping the end in mind and focusing on that what the house can be and what it can become, and kind of having that vision. And I kept holding on to this vision. People come look at it and was like, oh, this is terrible. I'm like, nah, you don't understand. I got this in my head. And it got there and it landed there. And so that first home, the downstairs was an Airbnb. I would make like $1,700 a month on just the basement level. And then upstairs was 2 bedrooms, and I was renting out for $2,000 a month. So I'm making like $3,700 a month revenue on the home. And the mortgage was like $1,600, right? And so when those numbers start to come, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Thank you, Miss Jenkins. Like it's all coming together. And then from there, I refinanced that one. And now I'm in the next jump, which is a much harder situation because I have tenants who don't want to leave at all and they don't want to pay at all. And they outside all the time. We drove by there at 3 a.m. the other day. I don't know, on the porch. I said, man, I know you working, but I don't want that type of work, And so I got a whole nother battle ahead of me, right? But this third property, again, I got this one for $340. It's the biggest property in the residential area. It's near Congress Heights. It's literally 3 blocks from where they're building that George Washington Hospital. And so, Omar's building, right? My joint's right there. So what I'm trying to do again in this journey is to work with Miss Ebony and her family, but also with all the struggles I'm going through, which is a different type of journey, just again, keeping the end in mind. Because this property is actually zoned to be commercial residential. So I could actually add units on it and demo it and become a little Omar. You know what I mean? But I just got to work through those growing pains now. So I'll share that because we said, what, Lil O? Yeah, that's not going to stick. But yeah, so I just share those stories. I'm a little different from these guys because I'm kind of in the struggle of it. And I think a lot of us, especially from the questions y'all wrote, we're kind of grinding through. But just keep that end in mind. I think that's really the motivation that's kept me going.
And I think it's important that you bring up the struggle. Yeah. Because it's not all peaches and cream out here. Like every time you do something like, keep the end in mind and you're happy and people, oh, good job. You investing in real estate. It's like, well, you want to come help me with this tenant. So it's really important.
But Greg, talk about, that's not your full-time thing. You're not full-time trying to get tenant out. You're not full-time. You have a job. Yeah. Man, you're in the White House.
Yeah, so the little nonprofit I took the pay cut for, it was pretty small when I joined. It was only 3 employees, right? And it was all about gun violence policy. And when we got there, we really got some really great ideas. We were able to connect with Biden and his team before he got elected. And when he got elected, he was like, hey, y'all are my crew. Come on in and help me figure out this big problem. And so we went from being this small group of 3 to now 8, and we'll probably be about 12. So it's gone from a little kind of niche boutique nonprofit into now becoming, a multi-million-dollar nonprofit. So a lot of my energy is into that. But the house stuff is on the side. And I will say that the first thing I learned, and I'm gonna keep pointing at Dion and Ronald, because these brothers right here, we all suffered through it together in different ways. And the first thing I learned is you can't do it all yourself, right? When I got the Airbnb, at first I was trying to change the sheets and wash it, put the little soap in there. It looked good. No, nothing. Not that first couple of reviews was rough. And I had to call the homies like, yo, can y'all do a review for my place? Give me back, I said, man, I thought I could clean. I could not clean. And then, so that was rough. Again, I told you I was trying to do the demo and nearly killed myself. And it was like, damn, you can't do this stuff alone. And even working with your tenants, love even the best of tenants. They have challenges and problems. And with COVID, people's situations were very unpredictable. And I was trying to do it all myself. And so the big lesson I learned is like, just get you a team. You get you a good team, and it makes the world so much easier. If you're going to do Airbnb, just suck it up and find that cleaner. Find you a property manager if you have multiple properties. Find you a good real estate agent. Find you a good lending team for your refinances and money moves. Like, this is not a sport that you just go out solo on. You kind of really need to build that team and network. And even if it's just peers to share ideas with, that makes all the difference. And that's honestly why we created Ownership Matters, because we learned through experience and got burnt in a lot of different situations. So we wanted to try to create a space where you didn't have to go through that if you just, if you built those relationships. So,
Keith, let's talk about, for your small multifamily portfolio, how you've been able to leverage that into other things and just movement within your portfolio, because that's something I think people are curious about how that works.
Yeah, so as I said, my first property I bought in Columbus, Mississippi, I paid $45,000 for it, 2-unit building. My mortgage payment was $329, and my rent that was coming in was $70 to be insulated. And that really woke me up. Just like Omar woke everybody up, that layoff woke me up. So I need to be as insulated as possible. So now fast forward, I get to DC. and I meet this guy by the name of Ryan Butler. He picked me up at a bar. He picked me up at a bar.
Wait, he got game? What?
But I bring this up. Greg just talked about it. It takes a village. It really takes a village. And at this, I meet Ryan. He's like, "Oh, you should get into real estate. You know too many people." And I'm like, "Nah, I got a 401k."
Well, that was after I tried to get you to buy a house, though. Let's be super clear about that.
That is true. I hired Ryan as my realtor, and quickly we separated. But no, like he really gave me the game and broke it down financially about like investing. I had a portfolio of about 15 properties in Mississippi, just cash flowing. I bought my first property in DC, in Deanwood. Now, Harrison talked about why he went to Riggs Park. I looked at Deanwood. Deanwood has 3 metros, the most metros than any other neighborhood in the city. In 2017, it was ranked one of the top 5 places in the country to buy in, right? And so I said, okay, let me set my roots in the hood across from the Lincoln Heights projects, right? The biggest projects, and let's just see what happens. Let's just see what happens. After about a year, I bought that property for $358. After about a year, that property was worth probably like $425. After about a year. Now, to some people, that might not be a lot of money, but guess what? I had more equity after 1 year in that property than my entire portfolio in Mississippi. So guess what? I sold all of my properties in Mississippi and basically started to buy in Deanwood. I bought another single family home. And basically my model in Deanwood, I buy a property that has 3 bedrooms at the top and a basement, and I go in and improve that property and put 2 more bedrooms in the basement. Why? Because for Section 8 purposes, when you go from 3 bedrooms in Deanwood, the rent is like $20, $30 as your income. It goes all the way up to $3,000 a month just by improving that property, putting 2 bedrooms in there. And the cost to do that, to put 2 bedrooms in the basement, was probably like $2,500, right? So the margins was there, and I just kept repeating that. And so the last property I renovated, I bought and renovated, I partnered with a nonprofit. So there's not a lot of nonprofits out there that's looking for real estate and looking for properties to rent out. So I partnered with, and this property meant a lot to me. So we always talk about giving and things of that nature. When I bought this property, I bought it for $358. I renovated it, put about $100,000 into it. My mortgage payment is probably like, I'm giving numbers because this is important. My mortgage payment is like $1,500 bucks. This nonprofit came to me and said, hey, we basically have returning citizens.
How'd they come to you? How'd they come to you?
Oh, Harrison, shout out to Harrison. It takes a village. The
power of partnership. That's
but
what we're talking about, the power of partnership.
Here's the thing. Where I met Ryan at in 2015 was at the guy that Harrison introduced me to for this nonprofit was at his party. So it came full circle. This guy sits on the board of a nonprofit. It came full circle. And he said, hey, we're looking for properties to rent out for returning citizens. At the time, I said, you know what? I'm going to put I had a plan to put like $50,000 into it, but I wanted to make that property super nice for these people, right? I wanted to make it super nice because they've probably never walked into a home that was as newly renovated as this property, right? And that was very important. So the margins on that property with the nonprofit is astronomical, right? You can partner with nonprofits and make 300, 400% on your rental income. Literally, my mortgage payment is $1,500 a month. They're paying me $7,000 a month in rent.
What's the name of that?
You already know. And so at that point, and I'll be quite honest, it was a journey renovating that property. I was on the news talking about, at that time, the increase in material shot up 300%. Supply chain, right? And that's just real stuff. I had a budget. I ended up putting $100,000 to $125,000 in there, right, to make it real nice. But I could have made it nice for $80,000. But the price of materials. So when you're starting to get into a project, begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. And also, what is your exit strategy? Because when I moved from Mississippi, to DC, I said, okay, I want cash flow and I want equity, right? I want cash flow and equity because a lot of times when I was young in my investing days, I thought about cash flow. But we got to play the long game. It's not about right now. We got to play the long game because what Omar said, real estate is a get-rich-slow scheme. That's real facts. It's a get-rich-slow scheme. And I'll be quite honest. The next property, we're going to talk about Dion a lot. I sent Dion this deal. I said, well, I already was going to buy it. But I said, Dion, it was down the street from his house in Deanwood. Would you buy this property? Because Dion's model is, I want to be as close as possible to a metro. As close as possible to a metro. Dion said, man, if you don't buy that property, go do it. And we did it, right? And so my movement from Mississippi, dumping my cash flow properties to thinking about cash flow and equity was intricate. And it led me to being able to invest with Ryan in big 100-unit, 68-unit building deals, which is important. So that's mine.
Give it up for Keith James in that story. Amazing story. Two important concepts to keep, which will segue perfectly into Ryan. When you're thinking about investing, the balance between cash flow and equity. What I was talking about earlier, not as sexy, a little longer, a little slower, slightly lower risk profile. It's an equity play. It's long term. I want to have these. They're going to pay for my son's college and beyond. Cash flow is not bad to get you started, but you need to understand both, be able to evaluate both, and have a good team that can help you look at it. So Ryan, please.
One thing before I want to say, you should, when you leave this event, you should have at least 5 people numbers in your phone that sit at the table with you. When I say it takes a village, it takes a village. We have to move as a unit. We can no longer move individually at all. We have to move as a unit. So don't sit up here like, I'm gonna get people numbers. Create group chats. Create group chats. Like we got our group chat, like create group chats and continue to talk. Meet up for lunch. Go start a book club because that's the reason we wanted to create this platform for you guys to be able to do things like that.
And to go on with Keith's point, it's about sharing the wealth, but also sharing the risk. Right? We get so caught up in like having to keep it all for ourselves, right?
Amen.
But I mean, there's enough out there for everybody. There's enough out there, man. I'm telling you, it really is. And at some point, you're going to die. Your stuff going to be for somebody else. It's enough out there for everybody. So just keep that in mind. I guess.
So talk about your journey of the cash flow, equity, and then how that plays into your choice with multifamilies, how you evaluate them, and the group economics model that you are mastering.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll take a little pause, a little curve right here, because I think it's important to know this story on Coalition, right? Because some of you guys are our clients. Some of you guys don't know us like that. Some of you guys came from Gathering Spot or Washington Informant, something like that. But just know that Harris and I went to college together. And we played, I was a bum on the football team. Harrison was the man, okay? He was a tight end up there, had the bunnies, could jump out, everything, he was out there. But we established that friendship then. I mean, we were throwing parties together in 2005, all kinds of. We were throwing parties together in 2005, right? We were legends. We had rules changed and everything because of us. That's real right there. Yeah, we had the college rules changed because of us, so they had to switch it up. Shout out to the G2 from Georgetown to Howard, and shout out to the G2. And then Harrison was in real estate. He got in right afterwards. I had my thing. I did IT, yada, yada, yada. Came into Harrison. I said, Harrison, I want to buy a house. I mean, I hate to tell this story because but Harrison fired me as a client.
I told you about my risk profile. I'm like, I don't understand what the hell you're doing.
I don't understand what he's doing.
I can't help you. I'm going to release you back to the marketplace to find somebody better to support your needs.
But so Harrison released me back to the marketplace, and then came back to him. And I said, Harris, I want to get into real estate and be a realtor. And he helped me bring it to Keller Williams. I tried to join Harrison's team. He also re-released me to the marketplace again for a second time.
I'm at the bottom of Keith's scale. I'm like, no, don't want to.
No. no. And so, but eventually it worked out. So I'm here in there with Harrison. Harrison brings me in the KW. And then I meet Keith the next year. Harrison was 30 under 30 National Association of Realtor. That's a big freaking deal is what it is, right? Extremely well connected. He's the president of GCAR, which is a local real estate association board. And then I came in as Rookie of the Year the next year for DC and Maryland. So we were the top KW rookie for that year. And then Keith came in after me, crushing it. Sold almost 60 homes in 1 year. Okay, so that's fantastic. And what that does is it's taught us, this business has taught us how to be businessmen, how to be professionals, how to be family men, and really lean into relationships no matter where it's from, whether it's business, family, friends. I mean, as you guys know, we're all friends in here, and we're all business partners at the same time, right? And that's fantastic. Like, I believe in doing business with family. Okay, so let's get to the investing a little bit, right? So I did all the single family stuff, and what I realized, I sucked at it. Like, I was absolutely terrible. Like, my dad asked me, my mom and dad asked me when I was a kid, they were like, so you don't want to learn how to fix cars? And it's like, not really. It's like, what are you going to do when something goes wrong? It's like, I'm going to pay somebody. I told him that when I was like 8. And so I kind of kept with that mantra. So I'm not really the best at like a handyman and all of that stuff. And so the reason I got into multifamily, I'll tell you a little bit about that story, is that I knew that the bigger the deal was and the more I could stay in my comfort zone, or genius zone, whatever you want to call it, where I do what I do and I can bring somebody else in to do what they do, like I found I was really comfortable there, and so we was able to do it. And I learned that through coalition. And then after that, I said, well, let me take that same model to investing. And so I had one house in 2020. I'd done some stuff. I bought some houses. I sold some houses. I sold everything. Like Keith, I said, I'm getting out of this. I sold everything. In 2020, I had one house. At the end of 2020, I bought a vacation home in Virginia near 757. Who's here went to Hampton or anything like 757 up in here, right? So I went down to 757. I bought a home near the beach. Wasn't that much, $227. That's super reasonable, right? And I was like, man, this is awesome. I tried to do Airbnb, short-term rental. We got short-term rental guide over here. We got another one over there. Yep. So I tried to do Airbnb, and it was all right. Like, I wasn't the best at it because people kept calling me about all these problems and stuff. And I was like, man, I'm paying you to fix these things. Like, all right. So that didn't work. But what that did was that got me into, I'm back into investing again. And so after that, I said, I'm going to do multifamily. And I went and met somebody, another friend of ours. He's out there, a Latino brother named Rob Chavez. So he introduced me to one of my business partners on the investing side. And I said, I'm going all in, man. I learned as much as I could. And in 2021, at the beginning of 2021, we closed on a 68-unit apartment building. So I bought a 68-unit apartment building in 2021. And then I bought a 15-unit apartment building. And then I bought a 22-unit apartment building. And then I bought a 3-unit apartment building. And I got a 100-unit under contract. And I got a 10-unit. So it started. It started. So remember when Omar was talking about, like, that's the start. That doesn't mean all this money's just coming in like that. It just means that it started. But understand, I didn't do this by myself. No. This is group economics. My friends, my 15-unit, my first property, 68-unit, my boys put in. Had to go up there, scrounge up some money, couple mil. My boys put in. My grandma put in. Come on, grandma. These people be having money. You don't know where it's at. They be asking you to take them to McDonald's and get coffee and all this stuff, and they got $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 just sitting up in there. Come on, grandmas. All right. So my grandma put in, and then I went and got a 15-unit, and I did that with only my family. That was my father-in-law. Thank you. That was my father-in-law, my grandmother, 2 aunts, and my parents, and then me, of course. And I had other people that wanted to be in that deal, but I specifically did that deal with my family because I wanted to make a statement. I wanted to make a point that you could do things together, even with your family, because so many of us run away from our families because there's financial trauma and regular trauma going on at home. I mean, for years, I'll be honest, I'm from Podunk, Mississippi. I ran, man. I ran. And Keith be like, you want back home? I'm like, no. I'll go see my grandparents. That's it. So even then, there's still like things I'm getting over. Like there's a journey there as well. But I think the point I was trying to make is like my journey is within multifamily. And so I do something called syndication, real estate syndication. And that's just like a simple way of saying a partnership, right? We're just investing together. But there's some stuff with the SEC. You don't want to go to jail. I'm not like trying to go to jail or anything. So we follow the rules. But basically, we're raising money, kind of like crowdfunding a little bit. It's within that same realm. So we're raising money and buying property together. And that's getting cash flow to people. They're getting equity on their homes, on their property. So, and they're owners in the property. You actually own the property. You own the pieces of the property. So it's a fantastic way to build wealth because it does two things that I really appreciate. I don't like as much mystery in things that I do. And so in commercial properties, I know that, if I can do X, Y, Z with the property, I can increase the rents. I know that if I increase the rents because it's commercial property, it actually increases the value. Like there's a direct correlation between increasing rents and increasing value in commercial property. So, and we're going to talk about how our journeys are all connected in that way. And we'll be learning a little something about this right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Give it up for Ryan sharing his story. I'll distill down a little bit something about the multifamily investing journey that Ryan taught me in a way I want everybody in here to think about it to make it a little simpler. When you're buying buildings that are that big, they operate like financial instruments, right? They operate like a fund. So that is using your money, leveraging the money you have to get more money to buy something that can grow and give you returns, right? Like that's the simplest way to think about it. Because when you buy a house, right, that's the tangible thing. I'm leveraging a little bit of my money to get this house to get the dirt, but it is a physical property that is structured like a fund. That's why there are those separate rules. And can you, to the point of the affordable conversation earlier, can you talk about what you got going on now with that? Is that something you can bring up?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk. Okay. So in affordable housing, I'm in that space as well. And I got a property that's in Georgia and Atlanta Metro. We love Atlanta, right? Who don't love Atlanta? So in Atlanta Metro, and what's fantastic about it is that they're like national guidelines around maximum rent. So the young lady was asking about that, and the kind of the things that, just to be specific and affordable, there's maximum guidelines, meaning 30% of the area maximum income, 50%, 60%. So the rents can't go above those numbers, and that mechanism in and of itself allows you to keep rents at a certain way, but the government incentivizes you to have this because it doesn't make sense if it's $1,500, it's supposed to be $3,000. So the government incentivizes you in certain ways to make sure that you're still profitable while providing a good service, because they're not in the business of providing that, but they want to incentivize private business to do that.
And if you are interested in talking further with investing and being a part of things like that, that's something Ryan can give more direct insight to right now with his opportunity. And I want everyone to keep in mind that I was fortunate to sit on Mayor Bowser's most recent Black Home Ownership Strike Force. She created that. I was one of the 16 people in that group. And that conversation was really enlightening to me because I feel like I understand a lot about the real estate landscape, but the biggest thing we got to understand specifically around affordable housing is the government will never make enough to actually satisfy the need. Business is going to come in and satisfy that need. Now, the prices of it, what it costs, that's a whole separate conversation. We're talking about the business entity, the business infrastructure in between. That's where there is real opportunity for a standard, and sometimes more than standard, extremely profitable business. And that's the space that I'm excited for Ryan participating in that now, because that's where group economics can really do some awesome stuff, because that need is not going to be met by government, and the problem's only getting worse with kind of the future of our economy. So that's a space that, just know that it will need to be met, but the government's not building it. They're going to incentivize other people to make it and own it and operate it.
One question I have for Ryan: how many people hate to pay taxes?
Oh my God, y'all don't like paying taxes?
What? Ryan, can you talk about how some of these investments have kind of saved you on the tax side?
Yeah.
Tax avoidance. Remember what I said earlier? Tax evasion is illegal. Tax avoidance is how you get rich, like Ryan Butler. Ryan, how you get rich?
Trapping legally. You trap legally.
You're trapping legally. I mean, I think the fundamental thing you need to understand about taxes is that the tax code was built to tell you how the government incentivizes you. meaning they're gonna say if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, you're gonna pay taxes. But if you do happen to go and put your money in the places where we want the money to be, we're gonna give you some tax breaks on that. Like most of the tax code is built on actually how do you get the tax breaks, and real estate is a big portion of that. Donald J. Trump put in a lot of things while he was in office, and that was around. He's a real estate guy, so he put in some things around real estate. One of it's the depreciation. If you own a home, you probably heard of it. Depreciation, right? You guys, is that a thing? You guys heard of that? Depreciation.
Explain it real quick.
It's basically over a period of time, depending on whether you're commercial or whether you are residential. I think it's 27 and a half years for residential, and then 39 and a half years for commercial, where they basically say you can get a tax deduction off your, or tax break off your home, broken up over a period of time. Well, the way that it works in real estate now, you can accelerate that depreciation, particularly, and especially if some of you guys are like real estate professionals in here, whether that's realtor, and if you're doing investing most of the time, like you can accelerate depreciation. And what's fantastic about that is that it's basically a report, an engineering report that you can get, and that report would allow you to reduce your taxable income.
And that's cost segregation.
Cost segregation. So you can get a cost segregation report, cost segregation study, and that will reduce your taxable income. That you can use those studies. You can't use them on your main home, right? Unless you don't live there anymore. This is only for investments, right? So, but if you have investment properties, you can do it. If you have a second home that you can do it that way, that you have in service. It just has to be in service, meaning you're renting it out to someone. And those numbers can be ridiculous. Like, I'll give you an example because I guess it's best.
We're not tax professionals. No return is
We are not
guaranteed.
tax professional, but like this is just straight from the report. I'm just reading the report, right? And the report says that if you're buying a home that's somewhere around like $250,000-$300,000, you can have like basically the negative number on your tax from that property, somewhere around 25 to 30% of that property. So that's like, you'll see a negative 80,000, for example. And if you make 300,000 and you're getting taxed on 300,000, that's one number. But now you're getting, taxed on 220,000. That's a different number of taxes, right? So now understand the most benefits come from when you're a real estate professional, but you can also take advantage of these as well. You can carry forward losses. But talk to your tax professional about it. Also understand how it can affect your purchasing of residential property, because the bank's gonna look at it as, well, you got negative number. You made no money. How you gonna buy a house? Like, I made money. It's just the paper. The paper just says I didn't. So you're gonna have to explain some stuff to some people, but I still do it because I just don't like paying taxes like that.
And if you need that contact info, we're going to synthesize a lot of the information from today. You got questions, you hit us up for them, but these people that help us with these things, that's the power of these convos. I'm going to preview ahead before we give wrap-up statements here. We want to have structured breakouts before happy hour. What I mean by that is we got a pretty big room, so I'm thinking we segregate it into 3 sections, right? We're up here talking about single-family rentals, which is what kind of Greg and I are doing at a high level. We got the smaller multifamily, which Keith is doing at a high level, and the bigger multifamily meeting up in 3 different parts of the room. That's just my suggested group. If there's a separate conversation point, or Greg, if you had something folks wanted to talk about, you can go outside or elsewhere. But when we break here in that far side of the room, folks interested in talking about single family rentals, building community with each other, connecting to mind share and do what these brothers have done. Let's do it there. Talking about smaller multifamilies, Keith will be here in the middle of the room having that convo. And the bigger multifamily, syndication, larger deals, Ryan's gonna be in the far side. So that's how we're gonna end the day, with the structured breakouts, and then we're gonna go to the happy hour after. We haven't heard Greg's voice in a minute, so after Ryan, I wanna hear
I
from
was
Greg.
gonna say, did you want to take a couple Q&A before that?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, let's
Just gonna
do
let- I'm
that
gonna let
and get a
Greg
couple
do his thing.
Q&A before that. But Greg's got a great story, man. Can I say what I love about Greg? Just 1 second, please. I love that Greg is showing you that you don't, some people look at us and say, well, you're in real estate all day, every day, so of course you can do that. And Greg is showing you don't have to be in real estate all day, every day. To me, he's the key.
Yes.
Like, he is the example that we need to see, because he's got a whole job, and that job
In the
is
White
super
House.
in the White. It's super. I see Greg on TV, man. Listen.
And he got a blue check.
Hey, he got a blue check.
I need a
Y'all
rent
know-
check. But I appreciate it.
For the blue check, it can turn into some green too. So he's got that. And even on top of that, he's still being a real estate investor because he's coupling his career with his wealth building.
I really appreciate that, man. I will say, I was a little man tier.
Thug tear coming down the left cheek.
No, I mean, honestly, though, I think a lot of it, like, just back to the end in mind, like, I want to be able to give something to my children, right? I want to be able to be that wealthy father, grandfather. And I guess I learned pretty quickly we're not going to get that from 9-to-5s. A lot of 9-to-5s aren't designed for that in our era, And yeah, clap, shit, that's real. And honestly, I think that seed was planted with my parents. My mom, when she first got out of college, she was a substitute bus driver, and she worked her way up and landed into working for an electric company. My dad worked for an electric company. They never made over $60,000, and I watched them fight through it, and then later in their life, they built a lot of wealth. And I say later, like post 50 years old, and they built it through real estate. They bought some land. They bought a little farmhouse. They built their dream house. And that was them kind of like in that season of their life, like, oh, we're just trying to build a home that we want to retire and be in for the rest of our lives. But then the house actually appreciated like crazy. The land appreciated like crazy, and they built that wealth. And I saw that in them, and I was like, man, y'all worked your whole lives in these companies and walked away with this little amount. And you made a couple big real estate moves, and now you're wealthy for generations. And so, I don't know. That really stuck with me. So that's a lot of what I carry with me, and why I'm so passionate about this, because I just seen what it can do. The other crazy thing that happened too is I used to be addicted to playing Monopoly, and when I bought my first house, my housing association. So I live with some rowdy people, And when I started house hacking, I moved in my friends, and they wanted to party all the time, and it was music. And some of y'all probably been in my house, don't even know it.
We have.
Yeah. But my housing association like hated us at first because they were like, we were the youngest ones. Like, y'all so loud. You always got people parking in my parking spot, and they were just such a nuisance, And I was like, man, we're trying to be good neighbors, but we are turning up on Friday and Saturday
And Sunday.
But I say all that to say, when that second house was available, I went back to Monopoly. I thought about Monopoly, like, okay, if I get 2 properties, then I can like build this and get a hotel, and then I got power and control. And all that started to like click. And when I got the second house, it did start to shift, because I took this house that was kind of blighted and made it livable and nice. And now the neighbors are like, whoa, Greg, we appreciate you for making our property value better and being a part of this. And I went from being the bad actor to like, oh, you're one of the leaders on our block. And I was like, oh, wow, that's how it works. So if I can get a couple more, I can just take over this whole like ecosystem. So I think that's the second big lesson I learned about the importance of real estate, is that it's not just about the cash flow and the equity. You really do have more influence and control over the direction of your neighborhood. And I like to think we're making it a more positive place, right? But I just want to kind of reiterate that, because for everybody, it might not be about the money. And maybe you are trying to like help the community and you don't want to gentrify everything. But once you own more, you kind of have more say, and you can help kind of influence all of that. So I feel like that was a stream of consciousness. But yeah, shout out to Ryan and Keith. That's all I got.
Want to do 3 questions?
He just said ownership matters because ownership is power. That's exactly what he just said. So that was dope. Let's open it up right now for questions before we go to breakouts.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Ron, quick question. I went to Achieve the Dream NACA event this past Sunday, and I know 3 out of 4 y'all said y'all were able to purchase your first multifamily property with NACA. NACA shuns owning other properties. They want you to live in it forever. So how were y'all able to finesse that? That's why I didn't.
So in
Sold our
front of
first
everybody,
property.
because we recorded, there's no finessing legal
No
financing
finessing.
rules and laws.
Not at
No
all.
finessing. No finessing.
We know not or hear.
Trap legally.
No, but to be blunt, my purchase with NACA, time. We talked about the two things that can help you get equity and be ready to leverage was time. I got to an equity position where I was able to eventually refinance out of that NACA product and into something else. I will just say one other thing though. If it takes them 70 plus days to close and 5 to respond to an email or phone call, they might have trouble actually tracking down what you're doing with your house while you own it.
Legally.
But understand that loan fraud is a federal offense and you should never ever do that at any time.
Legally.
And do it the right way. Go ahead.
Also understand that when you buy properties that are not in your personal name, that doesn't show up on your record. I mean, that's a business. When you put a commercial property, that's actually considered a business. So that doesn't show up on your credit report and all these other things, right? So when I buy my properties, like they pull my credit, but like they're not. I only own one property on paper if you look at Ryan Butler. I'm saying that you can have all these other properties that are businesses because you can own as many businesses as you want, right? But to have a property in your name, you can have zero and then use the NACA property if you want. That's not loan fraud. That's just buying commercial businesses. You're not buying the property.
But Ron, I think you're talking like starting out how to buy a 4-unit building using the NACA loan.
Yeah, I know.
First one.
Right.
You could use a non-NACA product the second time around. You could not use NACA twice. So here's what NACA cares about. Whose name is on the deed? Is your name on a deed and is your name on a loan? If your name is on a deed and if your name is on a loan, you're not going to be able to get a new NACA loan, period. Okay? Period. If you're going to buy the second property, there are other financing options, which our lenders here can talk with you about. There are conventional products. It's not going to be the same financial structure as what you got the first time, because like almost all of the low down payment, no down payment ones are going to require and have you sign documents, pretty scary documents, pretty real, legally enforceable documents to say this will be my primary residence. And that's what you should always do. You should intend for it to always be your primary residence. And the second time around, look at other options and explore everything. But I have not found, and I won't get up here and say there is a finesse to be able to get an owner-occupant only 100% down loan while you already have the first one as you.
But to be fair, you don't necessarily need it once you get the first one. Like I do believe in keeping as much money in your pocket as possible. But if I could give you like a 15-second spill on how this should work, it's not rocket science. You buy your first home with as little money as down as possible, 0 to 3%. You buy your second home that's going to be a 2 to 4 unit building. That's on the FHA loan. That's 3.5% down. And then you buy your third property, which would be another primary residence. That would be 5% down. And then you can buy another property if you want to get a big boy property, as we call it. Get your big boy property on. Then you can put 10 to 20% down. But you can get 6 units by putting no more than 5% down on any one of those units. And that's we have a plan at CPG, a coalition that we walk you through. It's like a 5 to 10 year plan. You can buy a home every year. You move from primary residence to primary residence. You stand within the law. You are doing the correct thing. You're not committing fraud. You're just buying a new property. And yeah, you got to move, but you want to make money or what?
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about the District of Columbia and the DMV in general is that you can buy a single family home and treat that property as a 2-unit property when it comes to income. Right? So what that means? House hack. So if you live in that property, you got a basement, separate interest basement, you rent the bottom out, right? You move out that property, you can rent the bottom out and the top out, and you maximize your rent, right? And you move to another property. That second property doesn't have to be a legal 2-unit building. It can be a single family home with a separate interest basement.
And to be clear on my journey, no down payment, loan 1, loan 2, because I lived in it, owner occupancy, only 5% down. Unit number 3, it was an investment, non-owner occupant, 15% down conventional. There's a 15% down conventional product. And then purchase 4 was 20% down because I had the assets at that time. So again, 0, 5, 15, 20, like that was literally my progression. You can do it that way, 100% legal. I could have, if I was going to live in each of them and move to them, done that with as little as 3 down each time if I'm going to live in it, right? 5. The lenders in the back will tell you. And real quick, Joshua David, Caliber Home Loans in the building. He drove down. He made it.
Josh David, how many people got a loan through Josh?
Yeah.
He's here. Did you have something else to add before we? Okay, let's come to this side.
We'll take 2 more questions, and then we'll go into the breakouts.
Yeah, this side.
Toya? Oh,
sorry.
Does any of those
So there's some finagling around that a little bit. What I mean by that is
No, it's legal.
no. This is legal. I'm not. So, yeah.
repeat
So
the question.
the question was, are there any low down payment programs for second homes? Right? And did I get that right?
No, not programs.
Yeah.
5% or below.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I say program
Well,
in the sense of a loan program. It's a loan program. And so I bought my home with Josh as a second home. It was down in 757 for 10% down. So you can do that. I think part of it has to do is it has to be a legit second home. So if you want to buy, but that doesn't mean it has to be super far away. That could be in Annapolis. That could be 50 miles or thereabouts, right? Somewhere around there. It's got to be like more than an hour away kind of thing. You can get a second home, and it probably can't be 5% down, but you might be able to get it for 10% down.
Or you could move. The other thing that you can do too that's helpful, he had to walk away, but it's true. Move your mail. Move your mail. The other thing I'll say is one thing I was able to do with the third house was the house was much bigger, right? And so you can always write a letter basically and break down why you would be moving if it is closer. So I was like, hey, this is a bigger home, anticipate a family, a dog, this one's fenced in. Like you can make the case for why you're moving your primary residence if it's a little bit irregular of a situation. And the right lenders will rock with you on that, especially if your paperwork is straight in other areas. So
because underwriters are people too. Underwriters are people too. Sometimes we think it's like a AI back there, but they're real people and they read these letters and it just has to make sense.
Yeah. So I just encourage you to really exhaust your options before you jump into that investment property purchase approach.
Last thing on the cash flow versus equity conversation, though, I know it is attractive and a great idea to do it with the minimal amount down, but if you're going to rent it out, you got to know how the numbers work too. So for a lot of them, like it would not make sense to try to get a super low down payment loan because my loan would not be enough spread from what the rent would be. So again, do it with the resources you got, but that math piece is where the team comes in to confirm if it makes sense. Like, who did you have next, Ryan?
LaToya, and this is the last one.
Okay, Keith, I know you already talked a little bit about how you finance your first property in DC, but could you all talk about how we can get to that second property? Like, is it pull money out of your first property for that down payment? Because it doesn't matter whether it's 5% or 20%. Like, where is the money coming from?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really believe in, and especially in the DMV, your first property, little to no money down, right? The and how those vehicles that I go to is 401ks, TSPs. When you pull from your retirement account, that's the only place you can pull from and not receive a 15%. Real estate is the only thing you can pull for and not receive that 15% withdrawal penalty. That rule was in place. So think about it. You work at a corporate company and you invest up to 6% in your 401k, right? Your job is actually matching you 6% as well. Some people have that. 3M had it, right? And also, 3M allowed me to buy into the stock at a 15% discount. So Amazon, 3M, all those Procter & Gamble companies, like they would make you do that. So that's money right there. That's free money that you can leverage, right? And so by the time you're going to that second property in the DMV, you could find a property for $300,000, put 5% down, and rent it out with 3 to 4 bedrooms and cash flow that property and also receive equity. So you don't need a bunch of money, but those avenues I believe in pulling from. And also, as Matt talked about earlier, that home equity line of credit as well.
But also, let's not forget the fundamentals, which is don't allow for a lifestyle creep once you get that first property, right? So don't allow, like, you're going to have delayed gratification in these things. Just because you increase and you got like another $300,000-$500,000 coming in doesn't mean you let your lifestyle go up like just like that, right? So the more you can hold off that lifestyle creep, the better it's going to be for you, because now you can take, in addition to your your first savings rate that you were doing, you can now take the additional money and save even faster. So it's like remember Heath was talking about that acceleration, right? Like you're in poverty, and then how do you get off? You just got to accelerate it enough to where it like comes off the hinges, basically, right? Like that's the velocity. There you go, man. Y'all physics. Y'all some smart people. Okay. Thank you, Will.
I was going to say too, for me, during COVID, the rates dropped through the floor, and so I was on a mad dash to get to my third house. Like I was just sprinting and harassing him the whole time. Like, hey, I got another option. Let's go. But what I also did is when I refinanced, I saw the saving to refinance, and I cashed out that savings, and then I used that savings to buy the next house. So my mortgage did not change in any major way, maybe $100 or something, $50. But the money that I saved from refinancing, I used that for the next property. And so I just encourage you that even if you're refinancing, it's a little crazy now with the 6% stuff. But if you have an opportunity to refinance and lower your rates and put yourself in a better situation, like just use that savings to build the next one and keep it rolling. That's what I recommend.
Do you want to do one more or no? One more? This side?
Yeah.
So he's talking about the difference
Jay
between
Knight. Shout out to Jay Knight over here.
talking about the difference between primary residence, right, which we talked about a lot of the low down payment, second home, and investment property. So knowing the language, knowing the difference when you talk to lenders is super helpful because there are different rates and different costs with each loan product and different rules to be able to access them, which again, Matt and Jay can break down to you. And my only advice, young lady, here is just looking at all, like by talking with lenders about all of your options. Like I always go to them first to say, hey, what am I at within your box? If there's nothing within that box, that's my strategy. I then get a little creative after knowing what the box is. And I think some folks say, well, I got to come with a different creative strategy. Sometimes not always, right? Sometimes, and a lot of times it's like, no, I can do this just with what we got right now instead of trying to find something else.
And from a mental aspect, mentally, right? Like I don't come from money, right? We don't come from money. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm dipping into my retirement account. I'm we were taught to work for 30 years, put all your money in a retirement account, and just let it build up, right? Well, guess what? That money was put there to invest, right? And think about the market in the last 6 to 8 months. Like in the last year. So real estate has increased in value probably more than some of your retirement accounts. So think of it as a vehicle. Don't get tied and emotionally attached to these instruments. It's just another vehicle to get you to where you want to go.
That boy's smart. That boy's smart. So I think if I'm hearing you right, how do you protect yourself when there are potential catastrophes, disasters? Like, for example, people stop paying rent during COVID. Like, how do you protect yourself during those scenarios, right? I think that one of the ways that we do it is that, particularly Keith, when you're dealing with affordable housing, when you have Section 8, the government was still paying during those periods of time. So when nobody else was paying, the good government was paying. The good government.
Yes.
So I think that's one way to do it. Even as for my investment strategies going into this next market shift, potential recession, is to focus on affordable housing because we don't really know what's going to go on with like market rates. And I'm seeing across the country just when I'm looking at numbers and like looking at this like mind-numbing data stuff that there are markets at risk. There are different locations at risk for having a value drop, rental drops, all types of things, people losing jobs. So,
and just
well, I don't want to pay that regardless. Well, it's not that I don't want to pay them. I'm just going to pay a lot more later, but I'm okay later. I don't want to pay them now.
But as a landlord too, like thinking about them as a landlord, we talk about Section 8 a lot. Well, I don't want to do Section 8. They're going to tear up my place and all that stuff, right? You got to be in tune with your property. Like you got to be in tune with your tenant. You have to vet your tenant. You have to interview your tenant. You have to go into I like to go see how my tenants are living where they're already at. Quite frankly, you know what I mean? So along with that, you got to be insulated. Short-term sacrifice for long-term success is my favorite quote for a reason, right? Like these Section 8, the Section 8 rent that's coming in is guaranteed. That's insulation. So don't be afraid to go find a property that you can Section 8 and rent out. My tenants love me. They love me.
Yeah, but yeah.
Action Jackson
I'm
over here
just
got
saying,
a different
like,
experience.
I'm that voice, I guess. I done been through it all, man. With tenants.
Y'all have.
And look, you have to take that time to find the right tenants. You have to get to know them, but you also got to really dig into their history. I always ask for credit reports. You know, people I turned away, I'm like, man, you still owe blah, 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 blah. And they're like, damn, you looking at all that? And I'm like, yeah, because if you owe on this, I know I'm not top of the list of who you're going to pay. So you have to really dig a little deep into their financial history and their direction. And look, Section 8, I have one now. She is tearing up my shit. You know what I'm saying?
But you didn't vet that tenant.
I didn't have a choice. But I will say, though, tearing up your shit, about tearing up your shit, they can't tear up with so much, right? And so when I say tear up your shit, I'm talking about cats on the carpet. I know Benji gonna get me on this one. Smoking in the house, not cleaning, the walls are dirty. But when you learn how to renovate and build and work on homes, I'm trying to neutralize Benji. Then you also know the value in things like carpet is cheap, paint is cheap. And so I think once you recognize that tearing up your shit is very different, repainting the walls than taking a 4-month hit on no income in the house.
But
right?
I'll say one thing though. You also have to recognize that whether it's Section 8 or whether they're college students or whether they're super rich, at any one of those like price points, they'll tear it up. And so it's important to understand that.
I want to reiterate that. Not because they Section 8. Because I've had non-Section 8 way worse. Yep. So yes, any rental.
And I'm saying that to understand that like Section 8 is a viable way to have tenants, those who want to give back to the community and help people in need. That's a way to do it. And you can still be profitable while you're doing that.
So the same way black people are not a monolith, not all one way, Section 8 and voucher tenants are not either. We, Coalition, all realtors, I'm president of our association, believe in fair housing for a reason, and you have to have consistent application procedures for everybody. Vet and talk to their people and actually call their references and otherwise. And in some case, you can do everything right, and the shit might go crazy. So I'm just saying, like, don't immediately put in that box. Specifically to your question, though, for me, it's 6 months. I need to be able to carry that for 6 months, assuming I'm not getting rent. That is my personal threshold to be able to carry it, and it's a separate savings account before I feel comfortable, because again, my risk profile is down here. Early on, you may not have that, but it should be at least be a few, because you got to have a cushion at all times. Ryan, how you want to keep going? Or?
When I work with people who say they're going to rent out the Section 8 properties, we actually have a way to minimize some of that. So literally, I want my clients to think about, okay, what is it going to be costs for painting, replacement of cabinet doors, because the boxes will be fine. We'll replace the doors, the cabinets, and painting. Place that into your calculation of, can you afford this? So if you're going to rent to that, mark that price point, whether it's Section 8 or non. Make sure you have that in your calculation to know if you can then make this affordable to you.
So budget, you're saying budget for turnover adequately and make the right decisions on materials at the time of installation. Yeah, we can keep going. All right, so let's poll the room real quick. Do we want breakouts or we want some more questions? How we feeling? More questions? Couple more questions? Okay, couple more questions. Let's go. I got the 3 left, and then we'll go to breakout. Farzana, Dan, Donna, and over here. Again, owning dirt is awesome. Being able to purchase it and the amount of cash you have down is going to be limiting to folks. You cannot get a regular loan to buy dirt, right? You can't get a regular loan to buy dirt. So depending on your cash position, I think that's what comes into play. If it is extremely cheap and you can do it in cash, sure. If you have to get a commercial loan with different terms, then that's just not an option for everybody. Some people come with that really excited idea. That's why Ryan Homes, Cahovinian, all these home builders are able to do that, because they let you use regular financing to buy something that's getting built new from the ground. So the idea is great, but the actual execution is just not open to everybody depending on their cash.
Got one, bro.
Outside.
Be on time.
It's a one-time deduction. You can, yeah. So he was asking about the cost segregation study. There's a cost to it. It's not a cheap. I mean, I think I paid what 20. It's like somewhere between like $2,000 and $5,000. I mean, it can go up depending on the size of the property.
How many properties?
Yeah, and how many properties. So yeah, you just do it every year. But the way the game works, right, on the cost segregation is you basically just keep buying stuff every year.
Every year.
You buy it. You buy some more. So you use that,
renovate
and then the conceptually is you don't sell it. You don't sell it, right? So if you're buying things that you don't sell, when I buy stuff, I don't particularly like to sell it. Or if I do, I want a 1031 exchange into other properties. Real estate. Sorry, I say stuff because I mean I got a shopping habit, but it's just houses, right? That's the only thing I really got a problem with. Yeah.
We got a tax professional, so you talk with both your CPA and the cost segregation person together, because there are implications to almost zeroing out your income.
Yeah, that's an engineer, by the way. Like that's an engineering.
It's a separate
firm.
person. It's not just
No,
a
it's not
regular
a
CPA
CPA.
or tax person. They should not do that for you.
Madam. So for my personal investment philosophy, and we'll talk about that when we go to the multifamily, but my personal investment, you can have risk all up and down. Some people buy them empty. Some people buy them where they're fully renovated ground up. I like to buy things that what you call value add, which means they're currently existing rent, and I buy them at a fair price at that current rent. And then I'm able to, as people move out, I'll turn the units. So I don't kick anybody out. It's just as people move out, I'll go in and renovate those units and then put them at a different price.
For single family buyers in DC, it's quite often to buy vacant, just because inheriting a tenant can bring a whole nother set of challenges. And that's why you pay premium for a vacant property as opposed to one with an existing tenant, because tenancy laws in DC, if they don't want to leave, you're not going to get them out.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to. Well, I had a question for Brian, and then a quick statement about going back a couple steps to the house hacking with single-family houses. I think one part that I think is important also is to consider what type of loan you have on the first property. If it's FHA or if it's conventional. If it's both of them have different requirements regarding. I think the main focus is your income. In other words, can you hold down both of these mortgages with your income that you're making right now, irrespective of if it's leased or not? So I think that's just one point that I wanted to make that I think is important if you're thinking, okay, I don't want to get this one, but I want to get another single family. Well, you have to able to hold those right now, but a lender's not going to approve you. Or you can have, I don't know how far I can go into this, but you would need to have a lease, right? But if you lease it, then FHA is going to want to do a lease appraisal, or conventional is going to want to lease it. So those are the things to consider, like, okay, the income part. The question I have for Brian was, when you talk about depreciation, do you, so, all right, I know kind of what it is, because my tax card just does it. I don't really know what it is. So are you in favor of taking all the appreciation up front, and then, or are you a fan of taking a little bit of depreciation at a time? I guess it could be an exit strategy if you're going to sell it quickly or hold it for a long time, but you said that you don't want to sell it. So
Yeah, I mean, my short term is like 5 years. So if I'm doing something like you say, oh man, I'm gonna flip this. My flips are like 3 to 5 years. So when it comes to basically the question was, do you take all of the depreciation now, or do you spread it out over time? Because I buy properties, like I expect to buy properties every year. So because I buy properties every year, I will take everything up front, personally. That's because I'm buying properties every year. If you're not buying them every year, if you're like, oh, I got mine, I'm good. I don't know when I'm buying another one. And then also, if you're not a real estate professional, then the advantages are not as strong. It's really attractive to me because I can put that entire loss against my income. So like that can be really, if you say you buy $1 million property, well, I mean, that can be, I can't even do that math, like $400,000 of loss that you can distribute amongst the owners. Right. And so even if you call it $100,000, or call it $200,000, if you're investing in those types of things, you should have a little bit of money. So say you're making $200,000 and then you have a $200,000 loss. Well, your tax is going to be zero. You'll get a really big refund. I mean, they used to getting it from W-2, but on these, you get extremely large refunds. I've seen them. It's like, I think Donald Trump at one point got like millions of dollars in a refund. It was like a 7-figure number from the way that he carried his losses forward. So the other thing is like you have the depreciation, but you got say you got $100,000. Quick thing, 100,000. You lost 200. That means you got negative 100 left, right? So what we're mostly talking about is this year, but you can take that negative 100 and move it to the next year. You can move it forward, and then any money you make the next year you start going to the positives, and so you'll still be off on you'll still have that tax savings until you break $100,000 for the next year.
And please talk to your own tax professional about your own personal tax plan.
Yeah,
I'm not just
Tone question.
So as I said earlier, what happened in 20 and 21 was anomalous. The world was literally fucking ending, right? Like that's why the money was so cheap, and that's like what was happening then. It's hard to compare that historically. I've been licensed since 2008. I've been doing deals with Matt over a decade. 6+% interest rates were not scary to clients doing this in 2011 and 12, right? So it's scary now because it's double for what it was 20 months ago. But when you take a bigger look at this context-wise, this change we're seeing is really more of a correction than a crash. And if we look at the market fundamentals, specifically DMV where we sell, we got some really important things. Incomes and job stability, okay? And the last is dirt. Like I said, there's not enough dirt, right? Even if the tech bubble is starting to change and all the tech companies that were coming and fueling it cools off a little bit, you've got government contractors, a lot of other companies that have to and will always stay around here. And we quite frankly don't have a housing stock. Another fascinating stat, DC is like the second or third highest density of single family homes for a major city in the country. Meaning you go to New York, you got apartment buildings, high rises, other things. DC doesn't have that many. So we have limitations on how much product we can ever have anyway, which gives a reason for our prices to be insulated. In the last crash, when the nationwide values went down as much as 20%, DMV area overall was only down around 8%. So we have a lot of market fundamentals that protect us, and the purchase of real estate, like Omar said, is a long game. 4 or 5 years, you can get your ass kicked. 10 years, you're good for the most part.
Yeah, and to that point, and I think what Harrison is saying is real estate is local. Right? Real estate is extremely local. Now, if you want to look from a national forecast, there's possibility we can have a decrease across the board. But that's because you're gonna get some places that has such stupid appreciation over 2 years. They're gonna have they can have the potential to have really big like depreciation in their value. So when you average it all around, like you could see something across the board with that happening. You got places like Boise. Like what? All I know is they got blue and orange football teams. You got places like
South Dakota.
Yeah, even like Sioux Falls, Midwest. There's some places, even Austin, Texas. So there's some places that I've had like extreme amount of increases over the last couple of years where you can see like that really cool off and potentially catch a slump. But that's because a lot of money was coming in there, and the people going to those places, quite frankly, have a lot of money. Like those people are coming for second homes, or they're coming from tech places where they're already making a couple $100,000 and those type of things. So they have a little bit more disposable income than a lot of other people, and so you'll see those places have 20% appreciations year over year, right? So the places that had the most appreciations are at risk of having the strongest fall off.
I'll just add too, it's really important to pay attention to politics for this reason, because if we get in a dark place, especially being in the DMV, we're going to see it coming, right? We're going to see the trends federally, but you're also going to start to see your politicians start to make desperation moves. And they haven't started that yet. You know, they were trying to move the Washington Commanders Stadium. Those folks in Northern Virginia said, "No, we don't want that. We don't need it. It's too much." That shows me they're in good shape. Right? Amazon is coming to Arlington, no slowing down in their building, right? George Washington said, we opened a second hospital in the Southeast. Like they're moving, like in Anacostia, they're building a Ivy City smokehouse right now. You know, like if you look at the trends, it's going to be nice. We got a big bridge coming. But like all that stuff is a good indicator that if government is confident to keep building, then you're probably in a good situation. But I just encourage everyone, you should make sure you subscribe to the Office of City of Planning on watching their trends, their reports. They have all their forecasts for 10 years out. Every project is right there. It's not pretty documents, but it's all there. And you can see where they are. You can see when projects get delayed, when they get stalled out. If you don't know how to do all that, Dion here can show you the way, because he used to work he works in the development space on the government side, which he won't tell too many people, but now you know. So
And when you're at happy hour on your lovely rooftop, I encourage you to just look at how many cranes are in the sky in the city. There's more cranes in the sky in DC than anywhere else in the country. Believe it.
And they only go up to 14 floors. Serious.
Right.
It's a real thing. It limits the total amount. To the point of politics, I want to plant one seed, and we'll get the last two questions. You heard Omar earlier casually dropping the politicians that he just knows. When you want to talk about real power, especially larger development, those things do not happen, period, without political will, political money, and galvanizing public-private partnerships to happen. So if you want to talk about something you can do to build your clout to get into that bigger development space, it's supporting ANC, it's supporting your ward, it's supporting your council member. Like a part of my realtor leadership journey with our local real estate association is our political action committee. I pretty much always wear a sports coat. When I do, I got some really expensive jewelry that talks about how much I donate yearly to these different political campaigns, and nationally too. The insight I've gotten into both what's going on and the conversations that I can literally hit someone up to have because of those checks. And they weren't always big checks, and not even huge checks now. Like you can be involved and get the eye, ear, and understanding of your local politicians with time, with effort, and also with money. It's quicker if you cut a big check, but when you're building your way up, showing up to volunteer on campaigns, showing up to be involved in election stuff, special election season, that was a subtle piece of game that I don't think everybody really understood, but that is key if you're trying to build big stuff and build big relationships.
So one more quick thing. I used to work for DC government. I can say more now that I don't work there. So DC government is very reactive. So they're going to react to you, react to your requests, react to your needs. That means you got to constantly be in their face. Second thing, they try to automate everything to a website, a OVR. Press 2 to go back to the DC government website. It's like, whoa, y'all don't want to talk to nobody. That's because they don't want to do the work. But if you are in their office, they will rush things to get you out of their face. So go physically to places. Get to the human. Get to the human, annoy the human. They're going to get you what you need fast because they want you out of the way. And the last thing I'll say about the mayor, I love her to death, but she does not like inefficiencies. She does not like drama, and she does not like press from her agencies, right? So if you're not getting what you need, guess what you do? You make some noise. You make some noise. Make some noise. Yeah. Tweet about it.
Malcolm X style.
Call
baby.
Washington Informer. You know the publisher now. Get it in Washington Informer. Like all that noise, I guarantee your stuff is getting done quick. And so, again, I just want to give you those 3 tips. Again, they can't tell you that. If this is recorded, please cut that part. But you can get what you need from the government if you do those things.
Last couple questions over here.
Ma'am, right here.
So we're happy to send you both. Oh, you gonna clap? I was like, you gonna clap. Sorry. First, I am sorry if that is your perception or past experience that because as a woman, somebody was not treating you the same way. That's just wrong, and you haven't been talking to the right folks. So we're happy to connect you with folks that will not do that at all, period, as well as tax professionals that can meet you there. Because especially right now in 2022, yes, there's implicit bias. There's all these things that have historically kept folks out of the market, kept us away with access to capital. Like Omar was saying earlier, like white guilt right now is a real thing. It's a real thing.
Real.
So and the
Take
attention
advantage.
towards all DEI causes is like nuts. So if you are feeling at any stage of your journey someone is discriminating against you because of whatever reason, because of your race, you have people in positions of influence and visibility that can fight that. We have fought it for our clients in the past, and one of my leadership passions is to make sure that folks know and they're empowered to say, don't just take what someone's telling you. You have to have more resources. You have to have more folks that can help you, because there are folks that are not going to treat you the way. And I'm sorry I got heated about that, but that's it's a ridiculous question that you even had to ask. Like, that's not our experience. It should not have been yours. Sorry. And then Donna, take us home.
You change yours, Donna. All right.
What does it stand for?
All right, so TOPA stands for the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, created in the 80s as a way to combat unscrupulous landlords kicking people out and doing illegal things. It, in its original creation and iteration, had good intention. The loopholes in the way it's created now, there's a lot of challenges with it. We're fortunate to have the #1 multifamily listing agent in the city on our team, and shout out to Tayana, Donna, and Chris, our listing management
the
team.
#1 multifamily team behind them.
Yep.
Behind them. We understand how to navigate that. It can both create headaches that can kill deals, but can also create opportunities for deals if you know how to navigate it properly. And another one of my legislative passions in my leadership roles is to get TOPA, like we just created a new TOPA task force that will be going back in front of the Wilson building in the next cycle.
Hey, shout out to Harrison, because when he became president of, when there is like a political pact, right? Like you guys heard that before, right? A pact. Like, he's a representative because of his roles in national associations of realtor, where he has some influence on getting these things changed. And as you know, we're on the ground floor, a lot of us on doing some of this. You're investors, you're on the ground floor, you're realtors, you're on the ground floor, and you're seeing these things face to face, where these politicians, they don't always see that, right? Like, they only really know when their constituents come and tell them what's going on. And so we're fighting right now to make it more equitable for TOPA in DC. Like, that's a real fight we're having, like, very often, even within the political space, to get some of these things changed, to make it easier for transactions to happen. DC multifamily has, for a large city, I'm pretty sure it's the lowest transacting city for multifamily because of TOPA, meaning that there's less transactions that happen in multifamily sales in DC than all the other major cities around. And that's ridiculous.
And Donna brings up a good point about TOPA. Please write that down, because when you're analyzing deals with whoever you're analyzing deals with, and that property has tenants in DC, make sure that person understands TOPA, and make sure you have money, right, to play with.
Because frankly, it can cost you tens of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely.
Frankly.
Absolutely.
Tens of thousands.
We have a whole separate breakout about TOPA.
Yeah.
That the relationship exactly.
Yeah.
What Chris was saying is in whatever type of investment property you have to be present. You have to show up. You got to communicate. You got to know what's going on. I even build pop-ins. Like I have kind of young professionals in a couple of mines, and I'm just like, let me stop by. I can't drink light beer anymore because I got old. Somebody brings me light beer to my house. I don't drink it. I'm like, hey, young guys, here's a case of beer you can have. Let's walk around and look at things, right? Just by doing that a couple times a year, $10 a beer or whatever, I get to see and monitor what's going on. Those Bamas hadn't changed the lint filter in like 7 months in the house. And not Bamas, they're nice, they pay my rent, I love them. But like it's just building in touch points like that don't feel invasive, that are thoughtful is an amazing strategy to avoid problems and maintain that relationship with your tenant, because it's like deposits, right? You're gonna need to keep making deposits in a relationship, so when you gotta make a withdrawal, the account's not empty.
So if you have tenants and you're writing up your leases for next year, build that in. Walk through, right?
Yes,
Walk through.
right in there.
Build that in your leases. Now that's very tactful.
I do mine twice a year. If you're a little more nervous about it, build them in more. It is your home. You can write it in. If it's in writing, they agree to it. You do the proper notice. It is 100% okay. And they should get used to, mentally, they should get used to seeing you around. Because guess what? An absentee landlord is going to have a tenant take a lot more license. And when it comes time to it, even when we're negotiating with TOPA stuff now, if that landlord is a completely abstract person or an entity they don't know, it's easier for them to say, all right, well, screw them, stick it to them. I want 50 grand. If you can make a personal appeal, which we're trying to figure out now, that the time and effort, it's that deposit thing I was talking about. Like, I cannot make a withdrawal. I cannot ask for something of someone if I have not shown up in their life in some way and been a human that they know and can connect with. Awesome. Well, let's stand up one more time, guys. Stand up, because this has been an amazing day. We're going to give our mantra. And
What
then
a
break.
day. What a
And then we're
day.
gonna break.
What a
First,
day.
give it up for yourselves. Big round of
Yeah,
applause.
thank
Y'all
you.
did it.
Thank you so much
Long
for coming.
day, man.
Give it up to yourself. You guys are fantastic.
And then Simon, get something queued up. So right after everybody stops, I need some bass. I need
slide or
something a little ratchet, something a little fun.
Beverly and Mays.
We're gonna come back with our
Before I let
mantra,
go.
which has just been a blast all day. Thank you all so much. I'm so grateful for what we've done, what you have done, what you've been a part of, because my ownership
matters.
My ownership
Matters.
My ownership is
Power.
My ownership is
Power.
My ownership is
Power.
Any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we go to the breakouts?
Oh no, I don't think we're going breakout. I think we're going straight to happy hour. I think we're going straight to happy hour.
I got something really important in for the.
Jamie has something to say.
Jamie wants to rein us in.
Oh yeah. No, I was gonna. I want to reiterate from what we said at the very beginning of the day, real quick. Look around the room, find a person you haven't met yet, and meet them before this happy hour ends. And I also encourage you to find people that live near you, because everyone should have their location on their name badge. So find your neighbors, and build that relationship and that bond. And that's really important. That's what the free drinks are for.